This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So, good afternoon, guys. This is Sonny Garguilo. Very excited today. I get to chat a little bit more with Carolyn Hunt, the wife of the great Ray Hunt. Before we get into it a little bit, I just want to let you guys know at some point I had a radio show, and it was called Horsing Around Naturally with Sonny Garguilo. And from time to time, I like to get involved in these interviews when I can get someone that's of a some importance to me, someone that I think people would be interested in speaking to or listening to. So today, I'm very excited to have Carolyn Hunt with me. Carolyn, we chatted a little bit yesterday for a while. I really enjoyed that. But welcome. I want to welcome you. Thank you very much for doing this interview. Can you hear me? Carolyn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So Carolyn, I want to start by, let's start right from the beginning. Carolyn Hunt meets Ray Hunt. Okay. How does that happen? Where does that happen?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. Both of my children were in horse 4-H, and the 4-H leader told us that there was this horseman coming to town to do a clinic, and he convinced me to put both of the kids in the clinic. They could ride in the horsemanship class with this clinician named Ray Hunt. So I was working, I was weighing potato trucks for a neighbor, one of the farmers in the area. And so my days were long. And so by the time I got finished at night, it was cold. It was in November. The arena was cold, and all I wanted to do was get home. And the kids would come home after the clinic and they'd say, Mom, you got to meet this guy. You just can't believe what he can do with a horse. And it's like, yeah. I grew up on a ranch, and I'd been around cowboys all my life. And so I wasn't impressed with another cowboy coming to town. But anyway, towards the end of the week, I went by after work, and it was late, and I went in, and my sister, Roberta, had a 4-H group, and she had her group there, and they were selling coffee and donuts and hot chocolate. And she said, why don't you take this cup of coffee to Ray Hunt? She said he's been talking all evening, and she said he'd probably appreciate a cup right now. So I took the cup of coffee, I went in, and I gave him the cup of coffee, and I introduced myself, and I said, and those are my two children in your class, and they're loving what they're learning. And I said they've just been so impressed with all the information you've given him. And he thanked me, and he said, would you and the kids like to go have dinner with me tonight when the class is over? And I knew my kids would be thrilled. So I agreed. So then I went back to my sister, Roberta, and I said, well, Ray Hunt asked me and the kids to go have dinner with him when the class is over tonight. And she said, well, damn him. She said, I've been taking him coffee all week, and he hasn't asked me.
Love at first sight.
Pardon?
Love at first sight.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
You want your thumbs?
I might have to turn up the volume here.
Okay. I said it was kind of love at first sight.
Well, maybe attraction anyway.
Yeah. So from there you went to dinner, and how did that grow into a relationship?
Well, then he was going to be doing another demonstration in one of the neighboring towns. And he asked me if I'd like to go with him and watch him the next day. And I did. And so then he went on, he was doing clinics, and every once in a while he'd call me and he'd say he was coming through. Did I have a place to keep these horses? And I did, because I was living on a farm. And so anyway, that's he just kept me interested over the phone for a couple of years.
Oh, really? So you guys didn't really get together. How long were you seeing each other before there was talk of marriage and love and all that?
A couple of years. You know, he would come through and we'd spend some time together. And he was getting a divorce, and so was I. And so after a couple of years, I went on the road with him, and I'm going to have to change this volume. I'm having trouble hearing still.
You can't hear anything?
No. Let's try it again. Just talk louder, Sonny.
Okay. Is that better like that? No. Okay. Is this better now, Carolyn?
I think so. Yes, I can hear that.
All right. So I'll just try my best to speak as loud as I can.
Okay.
Okay. So you go along and you guys are together. When did you realize? You know, you knew he was a good horseman, but when did you realize that Ray was something special outside of being the great horseman that, you know, people said he was?
Well, I don't think that I realized how special Ray was, especially in the beginning, because I had grown up on a ranch and I'd been around horsemen, cowboys all my life. And my father was kind of like the horseman in the area. And so after I'd been with Ray for a while, I'd ridden all my life. I thought I knew something about a horse. And I found out I didn't even know how to lead one of Ray's horses, because Ray's horses operated on a feel. And it was a mental feel, a physical feel. And I didn't know how to offer that to a horse. And so I wanted to be part of what he was doing, and I wanted to help him. But like if I tried to saddle his horse, he never complained about it, but he'd come back and he'd lift the saddle up and reposition his saddle blanket and redo his saddle. And so Ray was very particular about what he did, and he wanted things to be right. And so that kind of fit the way I lived my life. And so that I really tried my hardest to watch him and see what he was doing and try to emulate that and just be a part of what he was doing. But I think it took me a while watching him go down the road and seeing how he was able to interact with all the horses, and regardless of what the horse's problem or situation was, he was always capable. He was always capable of, I don't say fixing that horse, but fitting the horse so the horse could come through and be all right.
So you're with Ray, you're going down the road. At some point there had to be a moment when you said to yourself, you see all these people approaching him. At that point, was he Ray Hunt, the Ray Hunt we know today, you know, that everyone admired? Or was he just Ray Hunt doing clinics at that point?
No, I think from the beginning, people couldn't believe what he was able to accomplish. I watched him do things with horses and work with horses that had problems. And in the beginning, everybody would try to bring the horse that this wasn't going to work with. And so I saw him work with horses that were trying to run him out of the pen. They were trying to kick him or strike him. And I never saw him not be capable of taking care of what the horse's needs were, and fixing it up so the horse could be all right.
So he must have been, I guess, in the beginning, Carolyn, you know, I'm sure he had his naysayers, you know, the guys who were cowboying for years. Did he get to a point where, you know, the old gunfighters, someone was always gunning for them, you know, to see if they were the fastest in the West? Did he come across that? Did he have that where guys would bring him horses and say, oh, let's see what you can do with this one? Or
yeah, of course. I can remember sitting in the stand. We were in Broadus, Montana, and this horse came in that you could tell this horse was troubled. And I was sitting by these two men, and when they sat down, they started talking about the horse, and they were talking about how bad this horse was and what he had done. But Ray always asked each person when they brought the horse in, he'd say, what's been done with this horse? And this guy said to Ray, nothing, we just caught him and brought him in. And then I was so upset because I'd just been listening to him talk about this horse and how bad he was and how he had struck one of the cowboys. So that Ray worked with the horse. The horse was fine. He got him saddled up, and anyway, went on to the next horse. But that afternoon, when the clinic was over, and I told Ray what I'd observed and what the guys had been talking about, and he just looked at me and he said, "It doesn't matter." He said, "I only ask them that question so they can be associated with their horse." And he said, "I never pay any attention to what they tell me anyway." He said, "The horse tells me everything I need to know about the horse."
so he basically works the horse that's in front of him that day. He doesn't care about the history. He doesn't care.
Well, the human is full of opinion, but the horse is the truth.
Gotcha.
The horse is a fact.
So I found a couple things interesting when we were speaking. You said you guys were on the road most of the years you were together. You really didn't. I think you told me you did 40 years on the road. Is that did I get that right?
Yes, over 30 years we did clinics, and we were on the road 45 weeks out of the year. In the beginning, we had a home in California, and we'd only be home for a month or so around Christmas. Later, we had a home in Idaho, and pretty much the same. Ray was obsessed with working with another horse. The next horse at the next clinic was going to be that horse that this wasn't going to work with. And so we finished one clinic and he couldn't wait to get to the next one.
So he really enjoyed the clinics.
You know, he enjoyed the opportunity to experience more horses, more personalities, more problems. Yeah, he enjoyed these clinics, and he enjoyed the people. He enjoyed the horses. I'm not sure we enjoyed the traveling that much. Some of the conditions that we experienced over the years were pretty harrowing. We turned a horse trailer upside down on bad roads in Montana.
Wow.
The trailer flipped in the air on the side of a mountain and landed upside down. And the truck stayed on the road. We got out of the truck and went down the hill, lifted up the ramp, and Ray went in and started handing me the horses. There were 8 horses in that horse trailer, and they all came out and not one of them was hurt.
Wow. Well, that was a blessing, I would think.
Well, race horses, when they were in a stressful situation, when things got tight, instead of them getting tense, they understood how to turn loose, to relax, to get through a situation, instead of fighting a problem or through an issue. So it was amazing. We loaded those horses up in another trailer that came by. We went on down to the Big Hole in Montana, and we finished the clinic that afternoon with those same horses.
Right. So I know we discussed this, but can you tell people that are watching, when Ray had first met Tom Dorrance and he came home from that day or that night, what his reaction was? What did he say to you? Do you remember that?
Well, when Ray first met Tom Dorrance, Ray and I were not together, but I've heard him tell the story many times about meeting Tom. First of all, Ray had known Bill Dorrance in California, and Bill had helped him with some horses, but Ray had this Hondu horse, and Bill had tried to help him. This horse had gone through a lot of trainers, and Ray ended up with him. And so Bill said to Ray, Ray, I don't know what we need to do with this horse, but he said, I've got a brother that's pretty good with horses. And he said, he's going to be in Elko at the fair, and you're going to be there. And he said, why don't you talk to Tom and see what he thinks? So Ray met Tom in Elko, and he was telling him about the Hondu horse. And Tom said, well, he said, you're here and the horse is there, Ray. So it's pretty hard to tell you what you need to do with him. But he said, I'm going to be in California in a few months. And he said, I'll come by. And he said, we'll see what we can get done. So that's when Ray met Tom. And a couple of months later, Tom came by, and he did come by Ray's place, and they started working with the Hondu horse.
And what was do you remember his impression of Tom?
Well, Ray said, for some reason, he said he never once doubted anything Tom told him. And in the cowboy world, that says a lot, because most cowboys can tell you how to do something and tell you how you should do it, but they couldn't do it themselves. But Ray said everything Tom told him to do with Hondu worked. And he said the horse just, he said that first meeting, Tom said to him, Ray, he said, I just want you to do with Hondu what you would normally do if I wasn't here. And Ray said, Hondu was a gentle horse. He was easy. He was good to be around. He said he wasn't mean or fractious, but he said, as soon as you let him into the saddling stall, he said that Hondu would get tight. And he said he would saddle him up, and he'd leave the cinch loose and lead him out of the barn and cinch him up and then turn him loose in the arena. And he said the first thing that Hondu would do would be bog his head and start bucking. And he said Hondu was bucking around the arena, and Ray walked over to where Tom was sitting on the fence, and Tom said to him, Ray, that's the last thing that horse wants to do. And Ray just said, it's like, but it's the first thing he did. But anyway, Tom said, Ray, one of these days your kids are going to be riding that horse. And it turned out to be true. Ray and Tom worked with the horse, and Tom said he never got on the Hondu horse because he knew that if he got on that horse, people would say, well, Ray didn't get it done, Tom did it.
Right.
So Tom said he wanted to get on the horse. He said he wanted to get on him in the worst way, but he wanted this to be Ray's project. And anyway, Ray said that he said he would take Hondu to a show to be showing him, and he said everybody else would be ginning around and running and sliding, and he said I'd be out behind the barn laying my horse down or trying to get him to relax. And what would happen if Hondu maybe had to make a tight turn, he'd tighten up and then he would go to bucking. But when Ray got him so that he didn't have to be tight to do what Ray was asking him to do, then all of that disappeared.
So that was a real, I mean, I've read, articles about him with Ray. That was really a special horse for Ray because he won on that horse, right?
Well, he said he was probably the most talented horse he ever owned. But he just said, it's hard to compete in two events at the same time. And he said you'd be trying to show him in a class, and if he got tight, he'd want a buck. So he said he had to get him to the point where he could slide him or turn him around or whatever he was asking him to do without the horse getting bothered. And then he said when he got him to that point, he excelled at everything that he ever did. I think he showed him 8 times that year and won 7 firsts on him.
Wow. That's pretty amazing, to think about that. But probably something we wouldn't, not expect from Ray Hunt, right? Carolyn, we talked about this, Ray having other hobbies. Ray he wasn't a golfer, he wasn't a fisherman, he didn't, sit around reading books. His only hobby was the horse, basically, right?
Pretty much. We had a daughter that was in Alaska, and we went up to Alaska a couple of times, and we did go out fishing, but he thought he wanted to fish, but he always got seasick. So fishing didn't turn out to be a big attraction for him.
Okay. And he wasn't a guy who would go out golfing with his friends or?
No, none of that was appealing to Ray. He was pretty single-minded about how he was living his life and what he wanted out of life. Ray pretty much lived his life on his own terms, and he knew where he was going, and he always said, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not lost.
So that sounds like typical Ray Hunt.
Yeah.
So here he is, he is this renowned horseman, even though he probably didn't want to be that or didn't care whether he was or not, but he was. And we see that in examples of when you guys went to the Spanish riding school, when you watched the performance. Could you tell everyone what happened that day when you guys were in the audience?
Are you talking about Spain?
Yes.
Well, we were in Spain. We had taken a group of people to Spain with us, and we were doing clinics at different places, and they had arranged for us to have tickets to go to the Spanish riding school and watch a performance. And when the group of us went in, they sent us right down on the first row towards the exit. So we watched the performance, and we loved it. We appreciated it. And as the riders all started to file out, they rode by Ray. They rode in front of Ray, and they all tipped their hats to Ray. And it was a beautiful tribute. It was very emotional for all of us.
So did Ray see that as a sign of respect, or did he see it as just courteous? How did he look at that?
I think he felt it as a sign of respect.
Okay. And what was
I think for them, having performed brilliantly in the maneuvers they were doing, for them to recognize Ray the way they did was very moving, and coming from that group of riders, I think it meant a lot to Ray.
so if we come off that scenario and we go back to the question, did Ray Hunt realize the impact that he had on the horse world? Like, did he understand that his legacy will go on? He is the guy who created all this. Without Ray Hunt, there would be no, I don't want to mention names, but all these big clinicians today that use his words and use his methods, there would be none of that. Did he understand, or I know maybe he was so humble he didn't really care so much. Did he understand the impact? Like, he was Ray Hunt, you know, you're Ray Hunt. People like me, he was, you know, I mean, I never met him, and I never had the pleasure, but I'm a guy who, you know, 30 years later, I'm still in awe of him, and another 20 years, if God lets me live, I'll still be in awe of him. And people after me will be in awe of him. Did he realize the impact he had on the horse world?
I don't think Ray ever went there. He didn't see himself creating a legacy. He spent his life trying to learn more about the horse, and that was all he was trying to do. He started every clinic saying to people, and a lot of times it didn't go down well with people, because he would say, I'm here for the horse first, and then I'm here for myself. And then he said, you're welcome to have anything that's left over. And they thought, well, yeah, but we're the ones paying for this. And it was like, yeah, you are paying for it, but I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for me and the horse. When Ray and I got married, he said to me, this is what I plan to do for the rest of my life. He said, for all the wrong things I've done to horses, he said, I owe this to the horse to try to make a better deal for the horse for the rest of my life. And if I can help the person, I can help the horse. And then if I've helped the horse, I've helped the person.
And you know, a lot of horsemen say that, but for some reason, when Ray Hunt says it, you can believe it. It's, you know, he was very honest, because he really was kind of a simple man, but a very wise, you know, I always say, Carolyn, I always say this. I said, Ray Hunt, but Ray Hunt, my impression was he was a simple man, but he was so wise. You know, we talked about this yesterday, and I thought about it all day today. I said, well, Carolyn was telling me, you were telling me about transcripts you were looking at, and you went back and you read them again, and you got something different from them. And you know, when I read Ray's words, even the quotes, and I've read them believe me, I've read them to death. Every time I go back and read them, or if I'm having an issue with the horse, I'll go scouring through a Ray Hunt quote to try to help me with something, or through his book. And every time I go back, I feel like I've missed something the time before, and oh, okay. And it doesn't mean I actually got to know, oh, okay, now I understand it. It's just I always get something more. It's so deep that it's probably deeper than me personally I can understand at this point.
Well, I think your understanding gets deeper as time goes on, the more you think about a situation and an idea and you work with it, um, the realization that it's what you thought you understood on the surface, the meaning gets so much deeper. And I think that I mentioned to you that Ray had always told people, what you need to know first will come last. What you need to know from the time you get on that horse for the first time, you need to know you need to know what square 10 is, and you need to know everything from square 1 to square 10 to get to square 10. But most people don't want to start. They don't want to start at the beginning. They want to go out. They want to slide. They want to do lead changes, but they don't want to put the time in with the basics. And you know, we ask all of our horses to be athletes, but how many of us are athletes? How many of us spend the time mentally, physically, even spiritually, trying to figure out where that horse is at, trying to fit that horse's needs so that horse can fit our needs. And when Ray moved with the horse, Tom said about Ray, the horse never understood when Ray quit going with the horse and the horse started going with Ray. The horse doesn't want to clash. He doesn't want to clash with your body, with your mind, with your heart. And he'll try to fit in there if you can fit him. And Ray would say, if the human can offer 5%, the horse will come from the other side with 95.
It's just things like that, Carolyn, just words like that. Like, you can't, you know, you could be a writer, you can be a poet, you can be a scholar. Those things that Ray had come up with were things that you only get through experience, I believe, and through opening yourself up to the horse like that. I don't think you can, there's no way someone can teach you that. You just have to be that, I think.
It's a time thing. This isn't something that you're ever going to go to one clinic or two clinics or 20 clinics and have it. This is something that you'll never have to put it in your pocket and own it. Ray always said what he was trying to learn, he said it was like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And he said as time went on, that light just kept getting brighter and brighter. But he said, I know I'll never hold it in my hand. But he said, I'll have a brighter light as time goes on.
So Ray said something in his book, and it fascinated me. It said, he said something to the effect that you'll find out, when you get this accomplished, that you're going to be a horseman. Not that
you're going to be what? You're going to be what?
I'm going to be a horseman. Not that I am one. Someday I hope to be one. What the horse taught me this. So Ray Hunt didn't even consider himself a horseman. He reading out of, from his book, I highlighted that. I found that very interesting, that he was so humble that, here I am calling myself a horseman, and Ray Hunt didn't consider himself a horseman. It's almost like, how dare I call myself a horseman when Ray Hunt didn't even consider himself a horseman.
I think Ray just considered himself a student of the horse.
And for life. For life. Carolyn, if you wanted to, what do you think Ray would want people to think of him now that he's gone? In his mind, how would he want to be remembered?
Ray wouldn't care. Ray wouldn't care how people remembered him. Honestly, other people's opinions about what Ray was doing wasn't of any concern to Ray. Ray did what he did for himself and the horse, and he liked people. He wanted to share what he was doing with other people, but their opinions, their ideas or feelings about him, he didn't take that into consideration. You know, he was true unto Ray Hunt. He was living his life and doing his thing, and he wanted to share it with as many people as he could. But if you came to a clinic and you totally hated everything he was doing, that didn't affect him. We were at a demonstration, and there was a world-renowned woman there that was working with this horse, and then she ended up not doing anything with it at the end. She didn't get on it, and we were having lunch with them later, and Tom and Margaret Dorrance happened to be there at the luncheon. And anyway, she made the comment that there was too many. She said, I could feel all the vibrations in the audience, that they were wanting me to fail. And so she said, I ended up not getting on the horse. And Ray and Tom were talking about it later, and they both just said, you know, that would never have affected either one of them. That all they would have picked up on was what was happening between them and the horse, not what other people thought.
So it was always about the horse, never anything else.
You could like Ray Hunt or hate him, and it didn't really matter. Ray was still going to do his thing, his way, and do it to the best of his ability.
So let's talk about Carolyn for a second. Carolyn, how would you like people to remember Ray Hunt?
How do I remember him?
Or
how would I like him to be remembered? I remember him as being the most interesting person that I ever met. He was, when I met Ray, he wasn't the perfect man, but he was the man that you wanted to be where he was at. He inspired people. He inspired you to want to be better. For you to have more to offer your horse, your family. I think that's what I appreciate about Ray so much, is that every person he came in contact with, he offered them something that was real and true, and something to aspire to. Ray wasn't known for bragging about what you got done, but if he recognized something that he felt was positive, he made sure that you knew about it, and he just made you want to be a better person.
So now, you're not Ray, and Ray had his way about him. You now, obviously now you understand the impact that Ray Hunt had on the horse world. I mean, he is by far, it's undeniable. Even putting his horsemanship skills to the side, which is a whole nother subject. The impact that Ray Hunt had on the horse world, that he changed the way people looked at their horses and worked with their horses. Just that alone makes him, in my eyes, makes him, you know, the greatest horseman that we've had in the modern era. Because let alone, there might have been a guy that maybe threw a rope better. Maybe there was a guy, you know, that the lead changed than Ray Hunt. I don't know. But bottom line, Ray Hunt was the man who impacted the horse world. One single man impacted the horse world to the point where he changed the majority of the horse world, and not just in the States, in the world, the way they work with their horse. That alone, for me, makes him the greatest horseman that had in our era. Do you agree with that part of it? Am I wrong?
Well, he changed the relationship between horse and rider. And he proved that horses didn't need to be forced or abused or hurt to get them to do what we wanted them to do. And this many years later, people are using these methods to work with their horses. It gives them a better relationship. There's more pleasure in it. I go to a lot of horse shows, and I see better horsemanship today than I did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think first of all, the riding public are better educated about what to expect from a trainer or someone that works with their horses, and they're not going to put up with abuse and fear or punishment when they send a horse out to be trained or to be ridden. So it forces the trainer or the rider to come from a different place. And Ray would always say about people that were doing things that maybe he didn't approve of. He just said, you know, people would do it better if they knew better, if they had something better to replace it with. People aren't being wrong to be wrong. They'd do something better if they had more in their repertoire to work with.
Can you remember a time maybe that Ray was angry about something he had seen or something, you know, that he didn't agree with or he witnessed? Can you remember any time like that in his life?
Well, I don't say that I saw Ray angry about, because if you were around Ray Hunt, there wasn't apt to be any real abuse. People might be doing things that didn't fit the horse, but I don't think anyone that ever came into Ray's orbit would intentionally, in front of him, be abusive to a horse. It just never happened.
Well, I would think anyone that's going to a Ray Hunt clinic has that train of thought, you know, the same train of thought that they're on.
What Ray had a problem with was not so much physical abuse as mental abuse to the horse. And it's just as impactful to that horse as being physically punished. You know, the horse does something good and the human doesn't recognize it, and then they go past that, and so then they ask the horse to do it again, and the horse tries and he does it, but he doesn't get recognized for that. And so you start losing something of the horse when you aren't aware enough to recognize the smallest change and the slightest try in a horse. And that's just as hurtful to the horse as hitting him with a whip or a spur.
It always amazes me the level of energy that the human would put into correcting the horse as opposed to, you know, comforting the horse. And, you know, when the horse does something wrong, the human immediately, they find the energy to correct that horse and, you know, put all this energy into telling him how bad he was, but they don't put the same energy into the horse when the horse.
Well, Ray said the horse doesn't need punishment. He said the human might, but the horse does not need punishment. The horse needs discipline, and discipline is something that happens before or during a situation. Punishment is what happens afterwards. And the horse does not relate the punishment with the deed.
So we spoke about when I visited with you yesterday, and I said to you, you know, Ray Hunt could have been a multimillionaire. He easily could have been a multimillionaire. He was that infamous at the time. I mean, people would have paid to sit around a campfire and listen to him speak. And I asked you if that had ever bothered you, and you kind of told me a couple of things that happened. One with Pat Pirelli, and you actually, you know, it kind of bothered you sometimes. Hey, look, we can use the money. What's going on here? Would you share that with us?
Well, I'm not trying to put anybody down, but like Ray was, we were doing clinics for Robert Redford at Sundance, and we'd been doing clinics for about 10 years. And when the book Nicholas Evans wrote, The Horse Whisperer, when that came out, Robert got interested in it because of our being there. So then when he was ready to film, he asked Ray if he would be the advisor or the technical director or whatever on the film. And Ray just said to him, he said, Bob, is this something you really believe in, or is this just you making a movie to make some money, or just making a movie for whatever? And Bob just stopped and thought about it, and he just said, well, Ray, he said, it's a movie. I'm making a movie. And Ray said, well, then why don't you go get Buck Brannaman to be your advisor? Because he said, I don't have the time or the interest in helping.
Now, why would he say Buck? Do you know why he?
Well, Buck was young, and Buck was getting started. Buck had a lot to offer the horse, and Buck was a sincere student of Ray's, and he knew that Buck could do all the things that Bob was going to need to get done with the horse. Okay. And Buck has always been a good friend. I've known Buck since he was 17 years old, and he's a good horseman.
So, and then there was a situation where Ray was offered an enormous amount of money by Pat Pirelli. Would you tell that story? Is that okay to tell?
I guess. I mean, one time Buck and his wife showed up at the ranch in Texas, and they were spending a couple of days. And so we were having dinner one evening, and Pat said to Ray, Ray said, would you consider coming to the ranch in, I think it was out of Durango somewhere, wherever Buck or wherever Pat is in the summertime. Pagosis, I don't know, can't remember. But anyway, he said, I'll give you $100,000 if you come and spend a week with me and 5 of my top students. And Ray said, Pat, he said, you don't have enough money for me to spend a week with you.
Now, why do you think he turned that down? Was it?
He said it to Pat at that time. He said, Pat, for you, it's all about the money. And he said, that's not where I'm coming from. That's not where I want to operate from. And Pat said, he said, you know, Ray, in the beginning, it was about the money. But Pat said, I have as much money now as I'll ever need. And he said, now my desire is to help the horse. And I would like to believe that Pat was sincere in that statement.
Right. So I want to finish up with you because I don't want to keep you too long, but I know you're working on a book, and I'm excited about it. Can you tell us a little bit about the book? What's going on? Like, what kind of book is it? Is it a book about Ray and Carolyn? Is it a book about Ray?
It's not my book. It's these are transcripts that I'm trying to edit and organize. And we recorded some of the clinics, and then we had it transcribed. And so I'm just going through it and editing and organizing it, and maybe putting different paragraphs together that I think might have some meaning. And I think it seems to me like when I'm looking at this material, that Ray is going into more depth. And then I look at it again and I think maybe it feels like there's more depth to it now because I understand it at a different level than I did at the time I was hearing it. So I think it's going to mean something, especially to people that were around Ray and that had attended these clinics in the past. And I hope it's information that maybe just reminds people. Sometimes I listen to tapes of Ray's just for me to get in that learning frame of mind again. And hearing his voice and hearing him talk about the horse, it just kind of mellows you out. And I rated a lot of talking at his clinics, and I think it just puts you in that mood. Anyway, the book isn't about me, and it's I just want it to be Ray's book. In his words, you're going to read it. Sometimes the grammar isn't maybe what it should be, but I'm trying to leave a lot of that alone because I want it to sound like Ray, and I want it to be his voice that when you read this, you're hearing him say it.
So when do you think that'll be coming out?
You know, I get in the mood to work on it, and then I just get really involved in it and I can't put it down. And then after I put it down for a while, sometimes it's hard to get back to working on it again. But I'll just keep plugging away, and maybe one of these days I'll have something that I'll feel like I want to share with people. So we'll see. I'm not putting any real pressure on myself. I'm going to do it on my own time schedule.
Well, I think it's great because I think it's great that we still have you here and you're telling his story because, you know, look, without you telling the story, yes, we could hear from guys like Buck and you know, Buster and Wade and you know, all these guys, Joe Walter, all these guys who had worked alongside Ray over the years, whether it be long term or short term, and we get to hear the horsemanship part. We don't really get to hear. This is why I wanted to do this interview, because I felt like who knows Ray Hunt better than Carolyn Hunt, you know? And I didn't even know that you had told me yesterday that you guys actually lived in an LQ for many years. I mean, traveling. You really didn't, you know, set your roots down anywhere because you were always doing clinics and you basically lived in an LQ trailer. And that's amazing to me. So how could you not know the man? You know, no one knows Ray Hunt better than Carolyn Hunt. I don't care how much time you trained with him. You know your husband. You were there when times maybe I don't know if he ever felt despair. I don't know if he ever felt happy about a certain thing and mad about another thing. You know, that's the thing I wanted to talk to you about because I could read, you know, I could watch interviews with Buck. I could read articles that Western Horseman writes about him. We could all do that. But to hear it from the person who spent, you know, years with this guy, you get to actually understand who he really was. You know, you've definitely given me some things to think about. You know, I remember telling you yesterday, you know, Carolyn was doing this 22 years, the first 10 years, I just, excuse me, I really had no idea. You know, I read about Ray and then all this epiphany and And then the last 12 years, I feel like I'm heading down the right road. And then you said to me, well, Sonny, don't get too excited. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but because 10 years from now, you're going to have another epiphany. So it kind of like, for that second, it kind of like was, oh, you stuck me in the heart there. But then I started thinking about it, man, she's right. Like, you know, I hope, right? I want to grow. And if I don't grow, I won't change. Without change, there's no growing. So, you know, even the smallest things that we spoke about yesterday, like turning loose, you know, I had a totally different idea of what that was. And you kind of told me what Ray really thought. And I'm so thankful for that. You know, I don't want to be on the wrong road. I believe in Ray Hunt's philosophy. I think he's the greatest horseman in our modern day era. And he's the guy that I base everything I do on. When I'm having trouble with the horse, I can go back to, not that I would know what Ray Hunt would think, but I would say to myself, what do I think Ray Hunt would do here? Because of Ray Hunt, I never blame the horse. And I can honestly say that. And I know a lot of guys say that, but I can honestly say that. You cannot tell me something bad about your horse. And I go back to what Ray said. Take that horse, put him in a pasture. He's perfect. Only when the human gets involved that he's not perfect. You know, I believe
The horse is always right.
Yeah, I just, you know, and I really took part and I really lived that. And I want you to know that. I don't just say it. And some it doesn't go well with some people, but I don't even care. You know, I'm at the point in my career, you know, at 58 years old, doing this 22 years, now I'm fighting cancer. I kind of feel like Ray, like, hey, look, you either like me or you don't, you know, it's okay. I'm just going to keep doing and learning it. And for me, it's about the horse too. It really is. I'll never be Ray Hunt. I don't ever expect to be Ray Hunt. And maybe Ray would probably not want me to be Ray Hunt. He would probably say, Sonny, just be Sonny and keep learning. And I'm hoping that's, you know, what the way I feel is the right way. And
Well, Ray always told people, if I can do this, anybody can. And you can probably do it better than me if you spend the time and have the desire.
right. Well, Carolyn, I want to thank you for this time. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Thank you so much for putting, you know, your time aside for me with this. I really appreciate it. You don't.
It was fun. It was fun for me too. Thanks, Sonny.
You know, you don't know me well, but I hope I made a decent impression on you. I'm very real, you know, kid from the city. I told you I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up in the city. I did not grow up around horses. So I'm doing my best to become the greatest horseman that I could be. And a big part of that is because of Ray Hunt. Carolyn, thank you so much. And hopefully I'll speak to you again in the future. Maybe I'll see you somewhere, you know, maybe I'll be one of the horsemen someday at Legends of Legacy or something. But
there we go. All right. Well, you're very welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Carolyn. And we'll speak soon. And thank your granddaughter for setting this up, please. She did a good job. She worked hard.
Thank you.
Hey,
You guys are very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I know it was like, you know, we're trying to get that whole thing together real quick, but I wanted to make sure this was right. Carolyn, I'm going to post this on Facebook. I don't use it. I won't be using it anywhere. Maybe I would put it on YouTube, my interview with Carolyn Hunt, but I'll definitely let you know before I do anything, if I'm going to do anything with it, and it's your call. But I do want to put it on Facebook because a lot of people want it.
Okay, that's fine with me. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn.
Bye.
I appreciate it again. Thank you.